Disclaimer, this week's podcast may mention topics that are triggering to some listeners. Please check the list of trigger warnings below in the podcast description. Welcome to the Book Tea with V. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Book Tea with V. And guys, I know it's been a little while, and it's simply because I've just been moving around so much. It's honestly been impossible. But today's interview, I am so excited. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what I've been reading. So, and I think this is going to be my top read of the year still. Nothing has matched it quite yet. Leave Me Behind by K.M. Morinova. This book, I don't know what it was. I started reading the reviews first, and I'm glad I didn't pay too much attention because I feel like the bad reviews came from people that aren't big dark romance readers. And if you're not a dark romance reader, it's definitely not for you. But I feel like those 1-star reviews really didn't do the book justice, because if you're into dark romance, this is going to be right up your alley. Of course, check your trigger warnings, but it's dark, military romance, bully romance. It just kept me on the edge of my seat. I could not put it down. If you haven't read it, put it on your TBR. But I think it's going to be my top read of the year. So check that out on TikTok and Instagram to see if it finally does go up on top. But I'm so excited to announce that today's pre-recorded interview is with none other than Sadie Kincaid. Sadie Kincaid, thank you so much for being on the Book Tea with V. I am so excited to have you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You know, listeners won't know this, but we've had some technical issues. I don't know what it is about the UK and Australia, but every single time it makes us work for it. So, you know, we've worked hard to be here today.
We have, but we've got here, and that's the important thing.
That's the main thing. Yeah, exactly. And I always start at the beginning because I find it so interesting to see where an author's started. And I had no idea that you started in crime fiction and under a different pen name. So my first question to you is, what made you go into spicy romance under Sadie Kincaid?
So I was writing crime fiction, and it was very local, kind of gangland fiction. So the characters were very dark. They were like mafia characters. And I enjoyed writing the relationship aspect of it. That was my favorite part of the books. But in crime, readers don't want to read about, they want to read a little bit about that, but they want to read about the crime, and that's the focus of the book. So I guess it was a lot of closed door, and I just wanted to keep writing. I was like, what? So that was where Dark Angel was my first Sadie book, and that's where that came from. It was kind of loosely based on some characters that I'd been working on for the crime series, and I just thought, what would happen if I didn't close that door? And that was it, really. And it was me and my Mr. Kincaid was sitting there one night, like, what would be a good name for a spicy romance author? And Sadie Kincaid kind of just was born. And
I love that.
I know, and I submitted my book. So I was contracted to HarperCollins for my crime books, and I submitted Dark Angel to them because I was under contract, and it was crime, and it was similar enough that I had to give them first refusal, and they didn't want it. They said it was too spicy for them, and I remember at the time being upset and thinking, oh well, that could have been a good thing. And again, Mr. Kincaid said, you were thinking about self-publishing, you've been looking into it, just give it a go and see what happens. And it is the best thing that's ever happened, really. I mean, yes, because my crime pen name I don't write under that name anymore. And Sadie Kincaid just kind of grew and took off, and it is what I absolutely love to write. I got the best job in the world. So it's doing my hobby as a job is incredible.
And I think so many people, aspire for that in their lifetime, to do something that they absolutely love. But it's so nice to hear that Mr. Kincaid is right there with you. Like, does he help you with like characters, plots, things within the books?
Sometimes I'll like kind of run a plot point by him, or he'll help with research, but he doesn't get heavily involved in the overall plot or but it's good. He's great just to listen, and I'll bounce ideas off him. And sometimes I just talk at him for 10 minutes, and then I've kind of talked myself around, and or into what I need to do. So yeah, he's really supportive and he loves what I do and he loves coming to signings and meeting readers. So he's very much a part of the Smut HQ machine.
And I think that's so nice too, because it does mean a lot of travel. There are a lot of signings,
Yeah,
especially for you having to go to America. Like, these are long flights. It's nice that you don't always have to leave. It's like, oh no,
yeah,
your family, your partner comes with you, which is really nice.
yeah, it is. And it's so good, yeah, to have him there and just to be part of the whole thing and to help out because signings can be so intense and it's good for him to see as well, what they're all about and what goes into them because he helps me like the prep for them and stuff like that. So
Yes.
it's good.
And sees the
Yeah.
reward at the end. The
Yes.
people that are loving the books, like, you're creating them within your house, within your home, and it sort of
Mm.
stays there until it doesn't, sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
you're at these signings and it's like, wow, it's so much bigger than what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Had you always been a big reader yourself before going into writing? Like, what was the catalyst there?
Yeah, so I've been a huge reader ever since I was small. I used to, like many readers do, use books as an escape, and I used to read everything and anything I could get my hands on. And I remember stealing my mum's Jackie Collins books when I was about 14, 15, and Stephen King I used to love when I was a kid, reading things that I probably shouldn't have been reading. So and as an adult I loved reading as well, but it was never something I thought I could do as a job. It was never something that was encouraged to think in schools, or it seemed to be something that was for other people, and
Yes.
publishing used to be a very different animal to what it is now, and self-publishing and like the TikTok and Instagram, things like that have really changed the landscape of
Mm-hmm.
publishing. And I think now self-publishing is a much bigger thing than it used to be. So yeah, I've always loved reading, and then the reason I started writing, so 8 years ago, so Mr. Kincaid and I have three boys, and our middle son died when he was a few days old, and I was on maternity leave. And so he'd gone back to work, our oldest was in nursery, and I was just sitting there thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And it was like I'd never thought of it before, but I just had kind of this light bulb of, I'm going to write a book. And I found this old laptop, and I wrote The Boss, which is the first book I ever wrote, in 45 days, the first draft. And I just remember sitting there and I just didn't, and like when, I wasn't with our oldest son, and just whenever I had spare time or my mind was wandering, to like negative thoughts, I just used to sit and write. And it really got me through an incredibly difficult time. And yeah, that's where it started. And at first I just did it for me, just for something to do. And then I thought, wouldn't it be incredible to see his name somewhere for people to know his name? And so my other pen name is part of his name, my crime pen name. And so when I got it published, and it was just a really special way.
Very special.
Yeah. And his
Very
legacy. So
special.
now when I get like people will contact me and be like, I've read your book and it got me through a difficult time, or it did this, or they resonate with the character. I just think that's because of this little boy who, has
Yeah.
touched hundreds of thousands of lives because, that hundreds of
A
thousands of
piece of
people read
him,
these books. Yeah.
is everywhere.
Yeah. So that's
Oh,
kind of
that's
incredible.
so. Yeah, that's very, very emotional and very, very just special.
Yeah.
It's and I can't imagine what that would have been like to go through, but the way that that's how you found writing, it just has a really beautiful thing to that too.
Yeah.
Just so, so special.
Yeah. It's like something really positive and special. Yeah. It came out of such a horrific and,
Hmm.
tragedy. So it is. And sometimes I think at the start, I'd kind of feel guilty that, how can something so good have come of something so bad? But it's kind of like 8 years on now. And I see this, it's like a legacy for him. And what
Hmm.
better legacy for him than to have, all these people impacted by, the fact that he was here for such a short time. Because I would never have started writing. I just would never have had you know,
No.
the time or the inclination to sit down and think, okay, I'm going to write a book. So
Yeah. And that need, I guess, again, to escape that time, in a sense of you going
yeah,
into a new world and creating something that you could escape, like you say, those thoughts.
Yeah. And being one of the most powerful things about being a writer is being able to shape a world, and everything happens at your say so. And, you can decide if there's going to be a happy ending and everybody lives happily ever after. And, the baddies get their comeuppance and the good people, or the morally grey people, get to
Yeah.
live happily ever after. So that is a really powerful thing, being able to control a whole world. And when you feel a kind of lack of control in your own life, I think to be able to create this world and decide what happens is something really
Yes.
powerful in that.
I love
Yeah.
that. And it sort of brings another question for me, and I hope you don't mind. It's had you had any experience writing? Because you've sat down, you started writing a book where you're a bit like, where do I even start? Like, I've got an idea, or had this been something you'd been thinking about a while? Like, how was that first draft for you?
Yeah, I'd never had any experience other than when I was in school and college. I used to love
Hmm.
writing short stories and things like that. But then I went into a very I was a probation officer, or a parole officer, they call it in the States. So it was a very different, it wasn't a creative profession. And I used to write reports for court and things like that, and I always enjoyed that side of it. But in terms of writing fiction, didn't have any experience, and I didn't know what to do. But I guess I see my books and things as they're very cinematic. They kind of happen as a scene in my head. So I just sat and wrote. And I mean, and I think if you've read a lot, you know how books are set out, and you know how chapters are set
Yes.
out. So that was a huge thing. I think to be a good writer, you have to be a reader.
Yes.
So I just used that really, and I kind of sat down, and like I said, it just poured out of me. It was almost like it was kind of channeled from somewhere. It was my
Yes.
friend was quite into tarot and fortune telling and all that. Says to me that you were channeling something, and maybe I was, but I honestly don't know. It just felt very instinctive,
Hmm.
and yeah. And even now when I write, I don't plot. I don't have all the. My friend has post-it notes everywhere and has to. Everything now is still very instinctive, and I'll just kind of sit, and I love looking at a blank page and not knowing what's going to happen.
Oh, I think that's incredible. And
Yeah.
I also think it's really inspiring for people, like we were talking beforehand, and I was like, oh, I'd love to write a book. But then I think what stops me is like, I've got no experience in it.
Yeah.
Where would I even start? And I think if I've learned anything from doing the podcast and speaking to authors, it's you start. That's literally where it is. You go from there,
Yeah.
you grow from there.
Yeah. And whenever, because we all often get asked, what's your biggest piece of advice for people who want to write a book, or for
Hmm.
aspiring authors? And the piece of advice I always give, which is probably annoys people, but is the best piece of advice, is just to write. That is
Yeah.
the only, you can't do anything else. You can't worry about anything else until you actually get the words on the page.
That's so true. And for me, I think an extra piece of advice is just make sure you get a good editor,
Yes.
just in case.
Well, I didn't for my first, up until Dante, I didn't. I used to self edit all my books, which anybody who's read them will probably be able to tell. But yeah, I did. I used, because I never ever, partly because I thought, okay, I've got a good grasp of grammar and English, and I'm sure, because I think we don't realise the work that goes into editing and
Hmm.
proofreading even. And I genuinely never thought they would take off the way that they did. I never thought I'd be reaching the kind of sales that I do. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to write these. It'll be a bit of fun, and a few people might read them. And then it was Fierce King that changed everything really, and that really took off. And yeah, and now I do have all of my books edited by my wonderful editor. But yeah, my first ones I didn't get edited, which I feel, and I said to her, we're going to go back and edit them all at some point when we have
Hmm.
time. But
But they're still so incredibly popular without that. So
yeah,
again, it's just incredible. I mean, and you were saying before, you have to be or it's great to be a big reader before being a writer. Do you
yeah.
still currently read? Like, what was the last book that you read? I know you probably don't get a lot of time, but when you do, what books do you go for?
I don't get to read a lot at all, and I can't even remember what the last full book was that I read. And I should, because I always get asked this question. I can never think of an answer. I did read, but it was a few months ago. But I did read Fourth Wing, and it was so good. Like, I
A
loved
lot.
that book.
Do you know what's really interesting? A lot of authors I've spoken to who don't get a lot of time to read have picked that book. What makes you think why are authors picking that particular book? Is it because it's just so different and it's obviously so popular? It's like I'll give it a go because I've heard so much about it.
Yeah, I think it is that kind of, well, okay, what makes, because it's a phenomenon, isn't it? And it's about like, well, okay, let's look at this and see what makes this book so incredible. And it is an incredible book. The story was so good, and even though it didn't have a lot of spice, normally I like to have a lot of spice in my books, but the ones that I read, but there wasn't. But I was so captivated by the story.
Same. It was. I love that book. I haven't yet to read the second, but I was
I
definitely
have,
enthralled by the first.
because I've been told that it's quite a brutal cliffhanger in book 2, and I don't want to
Same.
wait. So I want to wait until the last book. Well, book 3 is out, and then I'll read them together. Well,
We are the
not that I
same.
ever have time.
I
But
know, I feel like with books as well. When one comes out, 200 others come out, and you
yeah,
lose time. You have to be so
yes,
selective the more the years go on.
yeah. And also, I don't like to read books in my. So my favorite books to read would be dark mafia and fantasy paranormal, but I'm writing them at the minute, and I don't like to read when what
Yes,
I'm
and get
writing when I'm
mixed.
writing, because I would never want to. I don't know, like, I don't know, wake up with an idea and it's something that I've read, or it's a really,
Yes,
yeah.
no,
So
that's
I
so
don't like to
true.
read what I'm writing. Mm.
No, that's very true. And I like to ask this question of authors because I feel like we only know a certain amount, and we obviously know you by your books. But what would readers be surprised to know about you? Is
Oh,
there, I don't know, do you have a secret talent or?
I don't think I do have a secret. I mean, I love karaoke, but I'm not good at it, so I don't think that could be a secret talent.
But this is good to know for when you're at signings. Take Sadie Kincaid to a karaoke bar.
Yes. Yes. We did karaoke in Nashville after Romance Era, and then in Edinburgh as well. So yeah, it's kind of becoming a feature of our
Oh, I
signings. But
love that.
yeah, probably one of the things people would be most shocked to know is that for a short time when I was a kid, I wanted to be a nun. And that is because of the film The Sound of Music. Have you ever seen that film?
I
So
love
I
that
thought
film
that
so
nun
much.
went around singing and then married Captain Von Trapp. That is why I wanted to be a nun, not for any of the like actual nun things that they did. For the
Yeah.
singing, running around the hills and marrying Captain Von Trapp. But yeah, I wanted to be a nun for a couple of years.
I mean, I understand the Von Trapp thing. I really do. He's
Yeah.
such a beautiful man, but I don't think they would allow you in now. I think
I
that ship sailed.
I I think, yeah. They'd be like, no, we're sorry. You're
You're like,
beyond
well,
your sin.
read this, Sister Mary, and have a good time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least you could have tried. But you're known for a number of your Ruthless series. You've got London, LA, Chicago, and that's only to name a couple. Like, it's such a massive bunch of series now. Is
Yeah.
there a standout though for you within that Ruthless series?
Oh, they all stand out, I think. Well, a couple stand out for different reasons. So Fierce King stands
Mm-hmm.
out because that was the book that changed everything for me. That was the book that really took off, and that readers really got behind. So I'll always love that book. And then the Ryans were so much fun to write, which is why I keep writing short stories and I can't seem to let them go. And then Lorenzo was so in the Chicago Ruthless series. I mean, I loved all of those books, but Lorenzo was it's one of the best books I think I've ever written. And that was for people who don't know, his wife has died, and it opens at her funeral. And that prologue was I put a lot of myself in that book, and that grief, and that kind of just soul wrenching despair where you can't see any way out of it. So that will always be one of my favorite books that stands out for me. And then Broken as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first one of the Manhattan series. I just think Nathan James is probably one of the least morally grey characters that I've written, but one of the most complex in terms of like his
Yes.
emotions and and they dealt with some really difficult. The female character in that has a miscarriage, and that's something that I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced as well, and a lot of women have experienced. And tapping into
Yeah.
that was really, and chatting to some of my friends about their experiences of it, and So a lot of them stand out for really different reasons. And I think that's really good that I can't choose a favorite.
Yes.
And I often say when I'm writing a book or when I'm talking to someone about a book, I'll be like, well, that's my favorite. And I was talking to a friend of mine and about it's not necessarily that I'm being disingenuous, but they are all my favorites. I love all the characters so much. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to choose just one.
it is. And I sort of agree. I have to say Lorenzo just knocked me for six. That was the like I loved the whole series, I did. But I think because you got to see him before
Yeah,
you know, the death of his wife, and it was you really were so engrossed in that relationship a little bit, and you were intrigued by it. So then when it
yeah,
happened and what he went through, oh my god, I cried multiple times through that book. But still, it was still spicy, it was still fun, it was just that perfect contemporary mafia read. It really was. I just, yeah, I think about that Lorenzo all the time.
oh, thank you.
It is. I loved him. But the new series is so, and I say new series, we've got a lot going on because
There
you've
is a
mainly
lot going.
you've mainly written mafia and billionaire romance. What is it about those genres that you love the most? Like why those genres particularly over, say, sport or contemporary romance?
Yeah, I think I just love the idea of this morally grey alpha male who is not a good guy and who does bad things, but has this real, heart of gold where it comes to the woman that he loves. I just love something about that, and I've always enjoyed reading those books and watching those kind of films and that kind of really questionable, character, but he just melts for the woman that he loves. And I tried to write some bully romance because I quite like reading bully
Mm-hmm.
romance, but I just couldn't do it because I can't because I live with the characters in my head. I just can't bring them to be mean to
Yeah, you're
the
so mean. Why are you
yeah.
doing that?
So there'll be a little tiny bit like Dante, for instance. I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be ruthless, and he's probably one of the most in terms of the way he was with Kat after he found out what she tried to leave and stuff. He probably was one of the most ruthless, but he still wasn't that mean. He was still in his head like completely soft for her, and he's still,
There's always a line between the men and the women, isn't there? There's always
yeah,
like they're ruthless, but for their women, they're pretty
yeah,
much just kittens around them, really.
yeah. And I love that, and I think that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
although I've just started writing Billionaire this year, and now I've gone into Paranormal, I think that is the thing that the thread that goes through all my books. So in every genre those three genres that I write, it's the same thing. So those questionable, the men with questionable, I can't say the word, questionable morals, but they will still melt for, the women that they love. They'll be big teddy bears. So I think that's one of
Absolutely.
the threads and kind of what I think people maybe expect when they pick up a Sadie Kincaid book is to think, well, okay, he's going to be this horrible guy who
Mm-hmm.
murders people and gouges out their eyes, but he's going to love the female character. He's going to be
And that we're
honest.
fine with that. The thing
Yeah,
is, there's a market for that. So,
there is
a
exactly
big one, a big market.
a huge one, and we will forgive as readers, as female readers. I think we forgive male main characters for anything except for cheating. We don't forgive
Oh,
them that, but
no.
yeah, but our female main characters get away with so much less. Yeah, if they're a little bit too
Yes.
feisty or not feisty enough, or yeah, it's an odd because predominantly the readership is women, and I'm the same. I will read a book and the male character can do anything, and I'll still, if he's nice to hear, I'll forgive him anything. But yeah,
She
female
has to
characters
toe the
just
line.
yeah, they just don't get away with as much. It's interesting.
Do
So.
you think it's getting a little bit better, or do you think it's only very slowly people are starting to accept different female characters, more complex female characters?
I think there's always people who will love, like Kires, for instance, that in my Chicago series, there's a lot of people who I probably got more emails and messages about her than any of my other female characters. But then I got a lot of negativity as well about where she was too
Okay.
strong. She made the men look like fools. So I think there's always people who want those type of
Mm-hmm.
characters. But I think probably the male characters is a more broad brushstroke in terms of what people will accept. So I think
Yeah.
it is changing, and there's always people who want, different characters and different things, and the market is big enough for everybody to be able to write what they want to write.
That's so
But
true.
yeah,
And I feel like the minute you put yourself in a box, do you stop writing for you? And then
yeah,
that's, I guess, its own problem. But you've just
yeah,
obviously we've had the New Manhattan series and Broken we've just talked about, which was fantastic. I loved it. But we can't not talk about the paranormal series because
yeah.
was this the first sort of leap into paranormal romance? And
It
if
was.
so, how was it and how did you create, like, was it, I guess it must have been a unique experience creating that world, but were there any difficulties you ran into coming up with it, or it just sort of flowed to the page?
There were a lot of difficulties, and my editor, I've driven her crazy, I think, with this series. So when I set out to do it, it was because I'd written, I think, 16 Mafia books, and I said, okay, I want to write something different. And the Manhattan series is slightly different in that it's billionaire, more contemporary. But I wanted to write something completely different. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Jenny Midori, last year, and she writes urban fantasy and paranormal. And we just kind of were talking about, well, what about if mafia and vampires met, mafia vampires? So that's where it kind of started. And then I thought, no, actually, if I'm going to go into this, I want to do the whole thing. I like prophecies and I like fantasy and I like all of that. But the problem was I set these books for pre-order thinking that I would just write them the way I write all of my other books and be like, okay, it takes me 6 weeks to write a book. I could do this. And then I started, and the world building is so much different. And even though there's not a huge amount of world building in my series, there's quite a lot, but it's not like Fourth Wing level.
Yeah.
Because it's set in, the human world. It's just like a pocket of it. But it was so much more challenging than I thought it would be. It really, book one almost drove me and my editor insane. It was just like trying to get a handle on all the rules and
Mm-hmm.
well, he can't do that because he did that in chapter one and that breaks that rule that we've already set out. And so getting all that was so difficult. But then book two, which I've just finished editing today, came so much easier. And then book three is proving to be like, there's so many threads that have to be tied up and resolved.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm just like, oh, this book's going to be like 3,000 pages long if I'm not careful. So it's had a whole host of challenges, but I can look back now and say it's been fun. But when I was in the thick of it, right in book one, it was not fun at all. I was like, and it's put my whole writing schedule back for like a whole year. It's put everything back. I've had to push release dates back. I've had to cancel plans that of things I was gonna do. And so my editor said to me, if we're gonna do something like this again, you can't put it up for pre-order. We've just got to do it and then be like, okay, this is ready, let's go. So
Well,
we've learned a lot.
yeah, 100%. But I guess as well, with like, I find when I'm reading a fantasy, I have so many questions. And if those questions aren't answered, I'm like, but
Yeah.
you can't leave that out. That's really important about that world, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I guess there is that pressure of you've got to answer, I guess, most of the questions that come up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why would they
All of
do
the
that? The
little
how?
Yes. All of the little threads that kind of weave the web, because they're in every single story, but in this trilogy there are so many. And I don't make notes either, so everything's up here, which is, and again, well, I have for this, we've had to start this spreadsheet, kind of like a magical encyclopedia of, because there's so much to know. And I'm hopefully going to write other trilogies because there's wolves in this world, there's demons, so we need, it's helpful to have that all on kind of like a spreadsheet. So I've started doing that. All my editors started it off for me. But yeah, it's been very different. And yeah, I'm not sure if I know now, if I'd have done it, if I knew then what I know now. And the thing is, people love it. I was very, very anxious about people not reading it because people are used to me writing dark mafia. And a lot of my readers, most of my readers, I think, have come along with me and again, they know what to expect. It's going to be spicy. It's going to have those MMCs who are going to burn the world down for this, woman that they love. So I think a lot of them came along with me. And I've had a lot of people message to say that I haven't read paranormal or I didn't want to try fantasy or paranormal, but they picked it up and read it and enjoyed it. And then they've gone off and, fell down a rabbit hole of fantasy and paranormal, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, that
up.
is. Absolutely. Because, and you're someone who has multiple projects at the same time too. and we were talking about this just before we started the podcast. And how do you do it all? Because you've got mafia here, billionaire here, paranormal here. And for someone who's not writing this down, I'm just like, how are you doing this? How do you, I guess, write multiple books at once? Or are you writing one, but you've just got your ideas here, there, everywhere?
I'm usually only writing one, and I might edit another one, but it's usually within the same universe. So I'm like writing book 3 of the vampire trilogy now, but I'm editing book 2. Although I've also got book 2 of the Manhattan series, actually, so I'm writing 2 books at once. But I don't often do that. And I honestly don't know, to be honest, how I keep it all straight up there. And it's just the way my brain works. I think there's always a lot of stuff going on. And I was saying this to you before, I'm always thinking of the book 5 ahead or 3 ahead, or there's so much, I've got so many ideas. And this is why I drive my editor crazy putting up pre-orders, because I'm like, well, let's put it up and then I have to write it, because otherwise I'll get caught on something else and that book will never get written. So I genuinely don't know, other than I've kind of always operated like this. I think it's just the way my brain is wired, and I love it.
But it must keep you so busy, to the sense of, what is there something that you do? Like, what do you do outside of reading? Is there something that you do to sort of go, okay, I'm going to park that for a minute and go do this, just to have like you time? Is there anything that you do or like to do hobby wise, or to get out of the reading cave? No,
not really.
This is my hobby.
Yeah, writing is my hobby, and things to do with writing are my hobby. So I love almost every aspect of the whole. So I design my own covers. I enjoy doing that.
Wow.
I'll do that to relax. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to design a cover because I want to switch off for a bit. So that is kind of I'm a very odd, bizarre person. I never used to be like this. I used to have a real life and hobbies and everything. And now my life is consumed with writing and everything to do with writing.
But you obviously enjoy it.
I do, but I also have 2 young boys. So of a week, I'm trying to get better of an evening switching off, and of a weekend having more. So we go out, we do energetic things with those. So that's good to switch off. And music is a really good way for me to switch off if I want to switch off my brain. I was talking to people recently about, and I know Luna has playlists, doesn't she, for her books and things. I can't do that because music is my way of switching off. And I know it inspires some people. But for me, that's a really quick way of switching off. I'll just put on some probably cheesy 90s or 80s music.
Nice.
And that is a super quick way for me to switch off. So that's good.
I have to say 80s is my go-to, like that real 80s pop era. You can't beat it.
You can't. And it makes you want to dance, doesn't it? And how can you not, how can you be thinking about writing vampires when you're dancing to a bit of Kylie Minogue? I don't know.
Oh, it was, I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a show at the moment called Rivals on, I don't know what it would be for you guys in the UK.
But I've seen it. Is it on Disney Plus or something?
It's on Disney Plus. And it's got an 80s soundtrack because it's from an 80s spicy book.
Well, it's Jilly Cooper, isn't it? It's
Sadie,
a Jilly Cooper book.
I'm telling you, give it a go, because
it is on my list. It is on my list of things to watch. Definitely. I'm very excited because I love that. I've read that book years ago. Where it was one of the books I stole off my mum's bookshelf many, many years ago. Jilly Cooper and Jackie Collins. Yeah.
Well, honestly, I'm that person that just, like, literally right now, any excuse I'll talk about it. Like, oh, have you watched it? Telling everyone I can. Like, usually I'm recommending books. No, apparently now it's TV shows because it was very good.
Oh, okay. Well, I will. It's on our list of things, and when I'm going to reward myself with a binge watch when I've finished the. Nice. I'm also writing a novella as well. Sorry for the vampires. Once I've done that, I'm rewarding myself with a little mini binge watch. So I will add that. We will binge
absolutely. That. And what can you tell us about the books that? So we've got the Manhattan. We've got a billionaire coming out. 2 of the vampires. Can you tell us what you're planning?
So I've got I've got a vampire one coming out in December, which is going to end on a very brutal cliffhanger, just to warn people.
Okay.
And then the final book of that was supposed to be coming out in December too, which is why I was like okay about this cliffhanger. But as I was saying before, everything got pushed back because the world building was so much more intense. So that the final book of that is coming out in March. I have the next Manhattan book coming out in January and March. So I'm also writing them with the delicious James brothers, who are all just so lovely. And then I have a standalone age gap, Best Friend's Dad, Mafia book coming out May, June. And that's
Okay.
Sebastian Donovan, who's part of the London. We met him in the London Ruthless series. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I've also got a lot of signings next year, and I don't know how I'm going to fit it all in, but it's all exciting stuff.
That is exciting. And where are you going to be? Where can people see you next year? Where are you
I am
signing at?
doing, yeah, I am doing signing in Nottinghamshire in the UK in March, and then I am doing a really exciting book event, doing a Caribbean cruise with, I know, with Joe Arden. So we're doing, and it's a 3-night cruise from Orlando to the Caribbean, and you basically get this. So you get the cruise, but you also get all these bookish things we're doing. Well, we've got lots of ideas of the things we're going to do. So,
how did I not know about this?
oh, did you not know? Oh, well, I will send you the link.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I'm going on a cruise next year, apparently.
Yay!
Imagine!
I'm going to send you the link.
Yes, please do. Because
yes,
I think. Are you going to Vegas in Love next year? Are you going?
So yeah, we're doing. That's the cruise is May. Then doing London Rare in July, Tennessee LitCon in September, and Love and Vegas in October. So we've got a lot going on.
Okay, well, with all that being said, I plan to be at Love in Vegas, and we're going to go and do karaoke.
Yes, definitely.
We have to do it.
We definitely have to do it. And there will be karaoke on the cruise as well. There'll be karaoke.
Well, if you didn't sell it before, you've sold it now.
There you go. There you go. I will send you
my partner's not really big into a cruise. Like, he's never been on one, but he just doesn't like the thought of being stuck on a boat. But I'm like, this is probably a good way to do it. You know, a couple of days is
3 days. Yeah. In the Bahamas. What more could you ask for?
I mean, not much more. No.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm going to take this offline, get the link and any more details that I can kind of scram from you.
Yes, I will send you it. As soon as we end our podcast, I will send you the link. It would be amazing.
Thank you so much. I know. Honestly, I'm never shy of trying to book a holiday, so I never need an excuse. But thank you so much. Honestly, it's been so wonderful getting to know you a bit more as well. Like, not only just through, your books, but you as a person as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Anytime. Thank you. Sadie Kincaid is one of those authors where I genuinely feel I could sit in a bar with her for hours and just talk anything. I was just absolutely captivated by her life, how she came about to be an author, just everything. So I hope you guys loved the interview, because I certainly loved interviewing her. So these are the books that I think you need to be aware of and you should add to your TBR this month. So to start, we've got Devil's Thirst by Jill Ramsower. It's the first book in her new series. It honestly looks so good. Good girl, bad boy, ballet, mafia. Say less. And the next one, this is already out, but it's only out for a limited time. His Christmas List by T.L. Swan. She only has her Christmas books out for like 2 weeks or so, but they have chapters for upcoming books. Be sure to check it out. I know I am. And then lastly, Jane Henry's Unleashed. It's another mafia romance, and there's just something about this book. I'm just really intrigued. I can't wait to read it. That's everything for today. I really hope that you enjoyed the interview with Sadie Kincaid. And if you want to get in touch or you want to find me, I'm at VReads on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And look, with TikTok possibly getting banned, be sure to add me on YouTube and Instagram. I will be doing a lot more content in the future. Thanks so much, guys. That's the tea this week.